بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وعلى من اتبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما بعد, inshallah, continuation of the seerah in a short synopsis, inshallah, so we can continue from where we left. Last time, subhanAllah, we finished or ended with how the Muslim, when they came back from the hijrah of Habasha, the first travel or the migration to Habasha, and how this was around the 5th year of the Ba'athah and how many people was there. And we talked slightly, and we'll catch up on that, on the second migration for Habasha later on, not today. But we talked about how the numbers of the Muslims when they migrated the second time is much higher, because obviously the news came that it is a place or a country that foster people of different faith and religion and all that. And usually this, subhanAllah, applies to this time as well, and will only continue to apply to every place. Whenever you have a place that is inviting and have no friction or no racism, as we say, or anything like that, this always can be inviting and always will become one of the best places, subhanAllah. So at that time, it was the Habasha for the Muslimin. And when they came back, they discovered that the Muslim has not been like less oppressed or anything, and the Quraysh rumor that they became all Muslims is just a rumor and all that. So subhanAllah, some of them stayed and some of them immediately returned back to Habasha, but this is what happened. So this time, inshallah, we'll start with the second negotiation with Abu Talib. And subhanAllah, we know that they talked to him first, and then they develop all these matters to become like strong and swayed the Muslims, whether it is by the media or whether it is by the full oppression and the bullying and the torture of Muslims and all that. And they did not go anywhere with that. And the number of Muslims were not that major to begin with, but they understood there is something brewing, and it is a risk that a lot of people will be affected, and seeing families, some of the families of every part become Muslim. So they felt there is a potential of risk of everybody there. So subhanAllah, they went to Abu Talib again and offered him. And they said, like, your Ibn Akhik, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has been talking bad about our gods and been talking bad about this, and has separated and divided the families and all that. And either you give him to us or you take care of that. So you kind of like silence him in some way. So Abu Talib, and we talked that Abu Talib is the closest model that you can think about to become a father figure to the Prophet ﷺ. So you can imagine this, so you can understand when we're talking about Abu Talib, you have to understand it's almost like your father is getting to you. And at that time, the Prophet ﷺ, he was like closer to 45 years old. So he brought him and talked to him about that, and his like tribe is doing this and all that. And the Prophet ﷺ at that time thought that Abu Talib will just give him away, or kind of like take his hands off, so there will be no protection. Keep in mind, subhanAllah, when we go through the seerah, I want you to do this movement to understand how to connect the seerah or understand. The first assassination attempt to the Prophet ﷺ never happened during the time of Abu Talib being alive. Subhanallah. So it is clear that Abu Talib, just by him being alive with the Prophet ﷺ, that protected him. At least they did not even think about killing the Prophet ﷺ. That happened all the way after the death of Abu Talib and Khadija and all this, and just before the migration to Medina. So all this time there was no thinking about that. So the Prophet ﷺ, when Abu Talib told him that, he told him, and this is very authentic. When you read the books of seerah, it is important to know some of the seerah is very clear and very authentic, and there is no difference, and some of it there is differences. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, Ya am, wallahu la wada'u shamsa fi yamini wal qamaru fi yasari ala an atruk hadha al-amr hatta yudhhirahu Allah aw ahlaka fi ma taraktuhu. So subhanAllah, and then the Prophet cried or teared that he told his uncle Abu Talib, oh my uncle, wallahi, if they put the sun on my right side and the moon on the left side, meaning they give me everything. Everything in this world will be under my feet, subhanAllah. Whatever I ask, if they give me the whole thing to leave this matter, which is Islam and the da'wah to Islam and all this, wallahi, I will never leave it until I die. Or that would be the end of it, subhanAllah. And then the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, teared up because he thought that his uncle is giving him away. So, subhanAllah, his uncle told him, Aqbil ibn akhi. And then when the Prophet came to him, he say whatever you say and do whatever you say. Wallahi, I will never give you away or do anything to be abstained from you, subhanAllah. So he gave him the full support. And this is the second time all Quraysh went and talked to Abu Talib, subhanAllah. And there is riwayat in that, like we talked about Al-Hakim wal-Mustadrak wa Sanad Hasan. So this is the riwayat that is very authentic in Sirat Ibn Hisham. Then we'll talk about, subhanAllah, another thing that I need you to understand when we talk about these, subhanAllah, mountains, Hamza and Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu wa arda. We're talking about the 6th year of the Ba'sa, after the Ba'tha of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in the 6th year after the Ba'tha. Because we talked about Al-Habasha in the 5th year. The Habasha was the first one. The first migration to Habasha was in the 5th year. So this is after that, the 6th year. And can you imagine, subhanAllah, when you come to the books of Sirah, when they are talking about the Ba'tha of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and then the torturing and the migration and all this, subhanAllah, and most of the books of Sirah will have almost clear chapter about Islam Hamza and Islam Umar. What does that give you in mind? This is not like talking about the Battle of Badr or talking about the migration, talking about that. Just by saying Islam Hamza and Islam Umar in a separate title and a separate almost chapter, give you the idea of how this is, subhanAllah, important and significant and a landmark in the Sirah, subhanAllah. So the personnel, like the people in Islam, subhanAllah, this is what the Islam was carried on. These people, subhanAllah. And we're not discrediting any of the Sahaba and say there was no title about Islam Uthman ibn Affan, Islam this, or Islam Mus'ab, Islam Mu'ad ibn Jabal. We're not talking about that, subhanAllah. When we come to the books of Sirah, this is very significant. Hamza and Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhum wa arda. Because the time of the Meccan time is a very strange and weak time for the Muslims, subhanAllah, the weakest. It's almost like the baby is born in the first few months. It's not even having enough bones or enough flesh or anything to do anything, unable to walk or crawl. So very fragile. So the Islam at that time is that like that. SubhanAllah, anything that is a backbone and strengthen the body, SubhanAllah, has to be significant. And this is what it is part of it. Hamza and Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhum arda. We'll go quick, inshallah, about Hamza first and Umar. And this is in Mustadrak, Sanadun Da'if. There is few riwayat, but the most one that is the closest to what happened is Abu Jahl. One of the times, Abu Jahl met the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in some of the meeting and kind of like and saw him closer to Jabal al-Safa, the mountain of Safa, and then he kind of like slandered him with all kind of language you can imagine. Abu Jahl cussing at the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And the Prophet was doing what? Nothing, subhanAllah, silent. Not saying anything, subhanAllah, alayhi salatu wasalam. So something for us to learn as well. No matter your status or anything, subhanAllah, this is a nahj of the Nubuwah. Has a min al-jahilin, and this is on the Islam. You just stay silent. Keep it going, and subhanAllah, this is what the Prophet did. Not like the strong and all that. So subhanAllah, nothing happened. But who heard him at that time? The maid of one of the Sahaba at that time heard what happened between Abu Jahl and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And this maid was for Abdullah ibn Jud'an. So as soon as Hamza was coming, and he used to go for hunting, and he said like he was hunting at that time and came with his archer and arrows and everything, this maid went to him and told him, have you heard about what happened to your nephew, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? And she told him about what happened between Abu Jahl and Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasallam, the nephew of Hamza, because Hamza was his uncle as well. And they mentioned that Hamza, subhanAllah, كان من أعز قريش وأشدها شكيمة one of the most eloquent and strong of Quraysh, subhanallah. Strong character and strong like physics and strong person, subhanallah. Nobody can stand in front of him, Hamza, radiallahu anhu arda. So he came, and where Abu Jahl was sitting with his people and talking and laughing, and he went all the way until he stood on his head, and then he beat him up with his bow, the archer, subhanallah, on his head, and it marked him, subhanallah. Very full. They say, فَرَمَاهُ رَمْيَةٌ مَمْلُوءَةٌ, subhanallah, very strong. So it left a mark on him, subhanallah, and of course, everybody around Abu Jahl was his friends and his tribe, Banu Makhzum. So subhanallah, they all stood up to Hamza, and Hamza, when he said this, he say, this is for what you did to Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is what happened. And Banu Makhzum, the tribe, came and stood to Hamza and say, مَا نَرَاكَ إِلَّا صَبِئْتَ. We don't see you except that you followed Muhammad to become a Muslim. Sabit at that time, Saba'a, which means that you've been derailed from the religion of our fathers and forefathers. SubhanAllah. You became Sabit. So Hamza radiallahu anhu arda say, وَمَا يَمْنَعُنِي. What would keep me from that? وَقَدْ اسْتَبَانَ لِيَ ذَلِكَ. I have been clear about what he is doing. أَنَا أَشْهَدْ أَنَّهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. I bear witness that he is the Prophet of Allah. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And whatever he say is haqq. فَوَاللَّهِ لَا أَنْزَعْ فَامْنَعُونِي إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. By Allah, I will never leave it. So you prevent me if you are honor and honest that you can do that. SubhanAllah. This is what we call قَوِيُّ الشَّكِيمَةِ. The strength and the integrity, and nothing can shake him, subhanAllah. Did he say that from his heart? He, subhanAllah, say that out of reflex to beat, subhanAllah, Abu Jahl and take the revenge for Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, his family, alayhi salatu wasalam. His mentality is the same mentality as Abu Talib, subhanAllah. Abu Talib was protecting the Prophet, loving the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, everything, but when it came to his tribe and the tribalism and kind of like what you're going to be dying on, what the people are going to say, the same mentality, like his brother Hamza, subhanallah. But he said that with his tongue, and just it came out of his mouth, subhanallah. Allah has made him say that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he went back home and he kept thinking and thinking, subhanAllah. He said, the ruwayat say that he could not sleep that night. The shaitan came to him. What are you going to do about that? Now you got yourself into this. How are you going to come back out of this? And subhanAllah started whispering in his head, and he kept unknowing what to do. This is a crisis. I cannot do what to say about it, subhanAllah. So next day, from the morning, he went to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, his nephew, and say, I have been got into this situation, and to be dead is better for me, subhanallah. So almost asking him, can you talk to me about Islam, subhanallah? Can you sell it to me? I'm going to be open-minded. I'm going to have my heart open. This is your chance, subhanallah. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam talked to him, and he started telling him and giving him the arkan and what is Islam about and all this, subhanallah. So they say, Allahu alqa fi qalbihi al-iman, subhanallah. Immediately his heart opened for iman, radiallahu anhu wa rada. And say, ashhadu innaka la sadiq, shahadatu sidq wal arif, subhanallah. I bear witness now that you are the Prophet of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. Fadhhar yabna akhika dinik, subhanallah. So you, my nephew, show your deen. I am in your religion, and I will protect you, subhanallah. This is the Islam, Hamza. And from that time, Hamza became Muslim fully, heartedly and everything. But got pulled into this with his tongue. And that has another meaning for us as well. Sometimes, subhanAllah, people can be pulled into the Islam just by intention or sometimes by something else. But subhanAllah, it could be a reason for them to become Muslim. Subhanallah. So the way get to become a Muslim can be so much different from everyone. There is no one way. And subhanAllah, Allah put the hidayah in different ways. Subhanallah. Not to us. The same hidayah that could Abu Talib, subhanAllah, become Muslim but couldn't. And he end up in dahdah min an-nar. So think about that. And inshallah, quickly, and we may not finish everything about Umar. The Prophet, there is two riwayat about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that the Prophet was making dua, and this is in this riwayat Ahmad fil Musnad, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was saying, Allahumma aiz al-Islam bi ahabba hadayn rajulayn ilayk. Oh Allah, give the izzah for Islam with the most you love of these two people. The most you love of these two people. So whoever you love the most, make him Muslim. Umar ibn al-Khattab wa Abu Jahl, subhanallah, the full opposite. Abu Jahl, the one that just was swearing at him, subhanallah, and cussing him and all that. Wa Umar ibn al-Khattab, the two opposite. But they have the same thing, that they are extremely strong about what they do, subhanallah. That's what we were talking about here. Not like any one of us, not like a person that become a Muslim, big deal. But subhanallah, these becoming Muslims, a change in the whole map of Islam. And we'll talk about that with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. What did he say, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, about Umar ibn al-Khattab? Subhanallah. So you can understand how they changed the map of the Muslims, just by one person. So, Sayyidah Aisha, radiallahu anha wa ardaha, she said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and this ruwaya in Al-Hakim fil Mustadrak برقم الحديث, Allahumma aiz al-Islam bi Umar ibn al-Khattab. So there another narration saying, oh Allah, make izzah in Islam with Umar ibn al-Khattab. They didn't say the two of them. Sayyidah Aisha said that this is what happened, because the Prophet knew that Abu Jahl is not going to become a Muslim. So he was making dua with Umar. Another narration, Allahumma ayyad Deen bi Umar ibn al-Khattab. All these are narration that is very authentic. So what happened, there is some aura or some pre-drama of before Umar become a Muslim. Subhanallah, one of the families were migrating to Habasha, and Amir and his wife Layla, two family migrating to Habasha, and Amir went to buy few things, and Layla was migrating, already coming out of Mecca on their way out. And Layla, subhanallah, marra biha Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab passed by his wife and asked her, where are you going and where is Amir and all this? And she said, like, you have hurt us and you have done this to us, and this, and Quraysh had hurt all us, and we are leaving for our deen because we cannot practice here. This has been like too bad for us. So Umar ibn Khattab, subhanallah, that was at this time, and this is the 6th year of Hijrah, who used to be torturing his own maid, subhanallah. He say, Sahibakum Allah. He got very soft with her and say, may Allah be with you, subhanallah. When her husband came, she told him, I wish you have seen Umar when he came and told us, may Allah be with you, when we are migrating. So her husband, Amir, say, are you thinking that Umar is going to become Muslim? By Allah, if his donkey become Muslim, it's much easier than himself become Muslim. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So, لو رأيت عمر آنفا تطمعي في إسلامه لا يسلم الذي رأيت حتى يسلم حمار الخطاب. He will not gonna become Muslim until his donkey become Muslim. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So it shows you all these for us. Subhanallah, never give up or never think it's up to your judgment. And subhanallah, if Allah wants hidayah for somebody, nobody can even expect or know or stop it. And the opposite as well. You may see somebody who's like very protective and all that, but doesn't die on a state of Islam. Subhanallah, this is from the lessons we learn day to day. Don't just judge by what the people trying to judge, color or anything, subhanallah. His Islam, there is some stories about him and going to his sister and then Sa'id ibn Zayd and all that. This riwayah, and most of the time they are saying actually this is not the most authentic. What authentic is, he had a dream about the Diyana of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That he say, Ya Julayh, Amru Nujayh, La ilaha, qul la ilaha illa ant. So he had a dream, first of all. And then the second, subhanallah, that I want to tell you that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu arda, he's saying 3 things about Islam Umar. ما زلنا أعزة منذ أسلم عمر. We have been very having our izzah, our integrity, our like this status since the day Umar has become Muslim, subhanallah. A whole change. He also say, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, إن إسلام عمر كان فتحا His Islam was a victory, subhanAllah, just by Islam Umar. وهجرته نصرا, and his migration is another victory. And Sultanuhu Rahmah, and his Khilafah on us and Muslims was a mercy for all of us, subhanAllah. The last thing Abdullah ibn Mas'ud mentioned, والله ما استطعنا أن نصلي عند الكعبة ظاهرين حتى أسلم عمر. By Allah, we have not been able to make salah on the Kaaba until Umar became a Muslim, subhanAllah. That's what I'm saying. When it's a landmark, it is a landmark, subhanAllah. The whole situation of Muslim has changed since Islam Umar. So inshallah, next time we'll start after the Islam Umar and Utbah ibn Rabi'a and his talk with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خيرا.
الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, to the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have started unit 2 of our hadith Deen intensive course, and lesson 1 has been completed. Today we'll start lesson 2 inshallah. In lesson 2 we will cover 2 very important topics. Number 1, the topic of wudu, and 2, the topic of miswak. Now keep in mind, because this is a hadith lesson, so we will talk in respect to wudu and miswak from the hadith perspective. Our respected Mufti Sahib has already explained the fiqhi aspects, so we won't discuss the fiqhi aspects and the Islamic rulings. Rather, we'll just discuss some benefits and some ahadith related to these 2 points. The word wudu. The word wudu is, or it refers to a specific method of purifying oneself. And this method has been taught to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's no need to go over the details of wudu, but in short, the minimum requirement is that a person has to wash 4 organs, 4 limbs, at least once. This is the bare and minimum requirement. This doesn't mean that a person does this on a regular basis. Rather, in a situation where there is shortage of water, or in an extreme situation, then a person can suffice on washing the face, the arms, up to and including the elbows, the head, and the feet once. However, it is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make wudu in its complete manner and in its complete form, the wudu which we are accustomed to. And this is done 3 times. So without any extreme necessity, a person should not suffice on carrying out wudu only once, because this will then lead to perhaps a person may even overlook the basic necessities of wudu. And it's pronounced as wudu, not wadu. The word wudu, they're both Arabic words. The word wudu refers to the water which is used to make wudu with. And the word wudu, with a dhamma, refers to the method of wudu. So let's go over some virtues. Virtue number 1. In a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has mentioned that when a person sleeps, shaitan ties 3 ties on the back of his head. And he says, go to sleep, become lazy, and may slumber overcome you. When a person wakes up and he takes the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 1 tie is unraveled. Thereafter, when he makes ablution, wudu, a 2nd tie is unraveled. And when a person stands up and he establishes prayer, the 3rd tie is unraveled. And this person then becomes alert and pleasant. Otherwise, if this doesn't happen, the words of the hadith are, this person will remain lazy and wicked-hearted. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned, when a person makes wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives his minor sins. When he washes his face, so the sins which his eyes have committed by looking, when the water is passed down, then by the passing down of that water, all of those sins are forgiven. When a person washes his hands, so all of those sins which were committed with the hands, by touching or by doing wrong things, those sins are forgiven. When a person washes his feet, all of those sins which are related to the feet, those sins are also forgiven. And we find in another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned, when a person washes his mouth, when he rinses, so all of those sins which are related to the tongue and the mouth are also forgiven. To the point that the sins are actually taken from beneath the nails and the eyelids, and they are removed. So keep in mind, where we find these words that sins are forgiven, this refers to minor sins, not major sins, because there are specific and certain conditions for major sins which have already been explained, and inshallah which will be mentioned at a later time. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reports that once Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he entered a graveyard and he made salam and he said, "Peace be upon you, O believers. Inshallah, very soon we shall join you." Thereafter he said these words, "I wished I had met my brothers." When he said these words, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum said to him, "Aren't we your brothers?" So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that you are my companions, you are my Sahaba. My brothers are those who have not yet come. But yet they will believe in me, they will attest to me, and they will accept my teachings. This refers to the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhu asked, how will you recognize your brothers? So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave a beautiful example. He said, if any of you have a horse that has a white spot on its forehead and white spots on its hooves, and it's standing next to a pitch black horse, would you be able to differentiate between the two? So the Sahaba replied, yes, of course. So in the same manner, in the hereafter, those people who made wudu correctly, those who made wudu perfectly, those limbs upon which water was passed on to make wudu, those limbs will be shining in the hereafter. And we find these words in the hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that when a person washes his arms and his feet, he should extend that washing. This means he should make sure that his elbows and his ankles are thoroughly washed, because the elbows, they have to be included in the washing. Many a time people, they only wash their arms and a part of their elbows are left dry. So a person should thoroughly wash his elbows. It doesn't mean that a person takes the washing all the way to the shoulder. No. Or he takes the washing from the feet all the way to the knees. No. It means he should thoroughly wash his elbows or the arms up to and including the elbows. Likewise, the feet up to and including the ankles. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that if a person was to carry out these three things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe out his minor sins, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall elevate his status. Number one, isbaghul wudu. So the word isbagh means to perform wudu correctly and perfectly, thoroughly. Once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was leading salah and he made a mistake. And after he finished his salah, he addressed the companions and he said, what has happened to our people? They don't make wudu correctly. These were his words, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This means there are different statuses of different acts in wudu. There are some acts which are fard. There are some acts which are mustahab. So the companions did not make an error in any fard. Perhaps there might have been a mistake made in one of the mustahab, the less and the lower acts. So if that had an effect on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's salah, imagine mine and your deficient wudu and how much effect it is having on ourselves and on other people. So again, many of us, unknowingly, because of our busy timetable, our busy schedule, we will come rushing into the masjid, rush into the wudu khana, rush to make our wudu, and rush to join the salah. And it's hoped that inshallah our wudu is correct, but there's a high possibility that maybe a place is left dry. So if this is the case, then why not come early, take your time, come calmly, and perform wudu thoroughly so that our wudu is valid. And when a person's wudu becomes valid, then his salah also becomes valid. Next, let's move on to the second topic, and that is miswak. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم السواك مطهرة للفم ومرضاة للرب. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that miswak is a means of purifying the mouth, and it is a means of acquiring the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a very famous hadith. And in this hadith, two benefits of miswak have been mentioned. Now, many people, they consider miswak, or they take it very lightly. And they assume that miswak is only for the elite class. It's only for the pious people. It's only for those who are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like ulama ikram, imams, and people who have beards. And for the general masses, miswak is not for them. Miswak is for everyone. These benefits are general and they're universal, and every single person should try to use a miswak, as this was among the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So two benefits have been mentioned in this hadith. Benefit number one, it is a means of purifying the mouth. Expert doctors, they have mentioned that 80% of a person's illnesses are related to the digestive tract. This means after a person consumes food and drink after he eats, many a times the bacteria is left and it's stuck in the gums. And if this bacteria is not removed, this bacteria makes its way into the stomach, thus causing illnesses. By using the miswak thoroughly cleans and removes any bacteria in the mouth, thus not allowing these illnesses to develop inside the stomach. And many reports have been done by non-Muslims who say that the amount and the power that the miswak has to remove bacteria is 20% more than any other tool or any other method of cleansing the mouth. Is a person allowed to use a toothbrush? Yes, he is, but he should also use a miswak. And can a miswak substitute a toothbrush? No, it cannot. Because a toothbrush, its functions are different, and a miswak and its functions are completely different. There's a famous saying, although this is not supported by hadith, but the ulama ikram have mentioned this, that the benefits of miswak are not confined to 70 benefits. There are many benefits. It could be 50, 60, 70, and some have actually written those benefits. Among those benefits, the greatest benefit that a person can possibly acquire is that at the time of death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant this person the kalima. And I believe there was a talk given on this topic. If that talk can be listened to again, it'll be a means of a lot of benefit. Ali radiyallahu anhu mentions that three things create a very powerful memory. Number one, fasting. So in today's day and age, if we speak to non-Muslim doctors, they will highlight the importance of intermittent fasting. And apart from the fard fasting, it is mustahab. It is recommended to fast every Mondays and Thursdays. Likewise, it is recommended to fast on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every month, and these fasts are known as Ayyamul Bid. So by fasting, not only does this create better health, but it makes a person's memory sharper. So number one, fasting. Number two, excessive recitation of the Quran. And number three, using the miswak. This is a statement of Ali bin Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in respect to miswak. So in the hadith, as-siwaku mathadatun lil-fam wa mardatun lil-rabb, that miswak, it is a means of attaining cleanliness for the mouth, and it is a means of acquiring the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something which is so insignificant brings such a significant benefit. That means it's not as insignificant in our eyes as we deem it to be. According to the Hanafi school of thought, to use a miswak at the time of wudu is recommended. This doesn't mean that this is the only occasion that a person can use miswak. We find a hadith of Rasulullah wherein it is mentioned that when he used to come home, enter the house, he used to use a miswak. When he used to wake up, whether it would be in the day or at night, he used to use miswak. And there's a very famous hadith wherein the Prophet ﷺ, right before his demise, Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha asked him, that, would you like me to bring the miswak? So he nodded with his head. He gestured with his head, meaning yes. So Aisha radiyallahu anha asked her brother Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakr to bring the miswak. The miswak was brought. The miswak was hard. So Aisha radiyallahu anha asked permission from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, should I chew it and make it soft for you? Again, he gestured and nodded, yes. And thereafter that miswak was placed in the mouth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and this was right before his demise. Showing the importance of the usage of miswak. So although he was unable to speak, but even then, miswak was so important that he gave it extra importance, that he used it right before his demise, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Another benefit, miswak strengthens one's gums. In the US, the medical bills, the dental bills, go into the thousands. So why not take precaution? The Sharia does not prohibit the usage of modern day treatment, but if a person can take precaution, why not? And we're not doing this to save money, we're doing this to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But every single sunnah will definitely have its own worldly benefits. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to understand and practice. Wa akhiru da'wana. Alhamdulillah, sadaqallahu al-azim.